Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Reigniting Small Business podcast. I'm Laura Richards, and I'm here today with Patrick Lee. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, everybody.
So, Patrick, today we're going to be talking about the myths and pitfalls that can stymie small business. And I think one of the things that we've talked about over the last several podcasts that we've had is the importance that small businesses play in the American economy. They have a really important role there, and probably never more so than when this pandemic is over.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, we've given statistics about the amount of employment that small businesses provide, and we talked about how it's 40% of the revenue being generated by business in the country. And I mean, there's a lot of statistics there, but I think the thing that's sort of key with this whole COVID piece is this is going to play a major role. First of all, there's going to have to be an engine that drives a recovery from this whole COVID piece. And, you know, the way that this whole recession is sort of playing out is it's a recession of employees. It's a lot of folks who they can't find a job. I mean, there are businesses that have gone under without question. There are issues there. But the truth of the matter is that this is more of folks not having a place to be employed. Well, guess what? Businesses employ folks, and nature abhors a vacuum. So there will be opportunity as we come out of this for those who wish to go and jump on it. Entrepreneurship is going to be incredibly important. There's going to need to be fuel to the recovery. And on the employment side, both that's where we're going to generate employment opportunities. And for those who can't be employed, what opportunities or aren't finding employment, what opportunities are there? Well, entrepreneurship is one.
You're exactly right. So very interestingly, I stumbled upon an article this week on Forbes, and it was an interview with the author of, it's called Burn the Business Plan, What Entrepreneurs Really Do, written by Carl Schramm. And basically, the article was looking at, and what he does is look at the destructive barriers that are in place between folks and entrepreneurship. Some of these things are just myths that exist that people believe, and because they believe the myth, they don't go for it and become an entrepreneur. And then there's one that I know is particularly close to your heart, and that's where I want to start, Patrick, which is all about bureaucracy and how the negative effects of bureaucracy to the small business.
Well, yeah. I think it's funny to watch government and government bureaucracy attempt to create opportunity, address economic development. I mean, talk about a wrong player in the wrong place. I mean, it doesn't work, and it doesn't work for a lot of reasons. But the ones that stand out the most are a desire for everything to be routinized, right? That everything is a checklist and processes and procedures that can be written out, and you follow the rules, and you're in compliance and all that sort of stuff. That is not how entrepreneurship works. Entrepreneurship is a running, adapt as you go, innovate, be creative, to hell with the rules. Let's just try this. We've got to figure out how to make it work. Workarounds. Bureaucracy and entrepreneurship have no real connection. In fact, they're probably mortal enemies of each other. So that whole piece of how government thinks that it can facilitate the development of entrepreneurship and incubators and all of that stuff, it's been shown to not work, and it doesn't work. The best thing that bureaucracy can do, and by bureaucracy, I'm going to be very specific, government can do, is it can make funds available, right? It can fund some things, but it needs to stay out of the business of trying to write the rules about what entrepreneurship looks like and try to teach people how they are to become entrepreneurs. That doesn't work.
I hear you. And actually, I thought this was an interesting statistic that Schramm pointed out. You and I have talked about how when we had our episode on the PPP, the local banks were doing a better job. And local banking is very important to entrepreneurship. And according to Schramm, one of the effects of government, bureaucracy and involvement has led to a decline in lending by community banks. So that's just one example.
And it's a great example. I do think, it was a lesson to me. It wasn't something I just knew, but in my entrepreneurship, the local banks are a completely different animal. They're an ally, right? The larger banks, you're a number. I mean, they're a bureaucracy themselves. They're not part of the community. I mean, these things, we say the same things again and again, but they are so true to the lifeblood of a Main Street. I think one of the interesting things that Schramm indicated, in addition to the small banks and why there's a decline, but the idea that there's actually a decline over, I think he said a decade. I don't recall exactly. You can correct me, but there's been a marked decline in entrepreneurship by number for a while now. That's a problem.
That's right. So yeah, and I think that let me do a quick look here. He didn't actually specify. He just said it's been going down for years. And we can get in now to some of the other points. So not only are bureaucracies detrimental to entrepreneurship, but there's also a few well-known widespread myths that also play into this. So one of those myths is that entrepreneurs are young and budding. Like young people, they come out with these great ideas, and that's what's important about becoming an entrepreneur. When what actually plays out to be fact, and he's the one that authored the study on this, is that it's in midlife, around age 36, that most entrepreneurs are born. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because the life experience that a person has to have to feel like they have their legs under them enough to have the resources and be able to connect the dots enough to go out there with an idea to make it successful, it would make sense that would be somebody in midlife.
I actually think that you said 36. I think he said that the number was 39. I think it's actually closer to 40 than the 36 makes it sound.
You're right. He started his business when he was 38, but the average is 39. You're correct.
Yeah, and I think there is the experience piece. I think that's absolutely part of it. But there's another piece to this. I mean, it's one thing we think of entrepreneurship as you're going to trade. You're going to patent something, right? You come up with an invention, you patent it. That's entrepreneurship. You go out and sell it. Wow, look what happened. But a lot of entrepreneurship is discovering gaps. And to discover a gap, you actually have to be in an industry or be doing something for a while. And then you go, wow, nobody's fixing this. If we just did this, it would work. And then next thing you know, there's a budding entrepreneur piece. So just by logic, it makes sense that it's going to be folks later on, because these ideas have to come from somewhere, some level of experience, some level of getting your hands dirty.
I think you're exactly right. And the other things to point out is that most people now, when they get to be, even in their 60s, they aren't done. Yet they have more income, more disposable income. They are not comfortable with leisure. They're worker bees. They want to be out there producing and doing, and they have the idea that you talked about from defining a gap, in their working years. So, so that myth, we just busted it.
Yeah, we did bust it, and it also opened up another myth, and that is that folks, need to be done in their early 60s. I mean, at one time, retirement age was 62, then went 63, and then 65. But truth be told, most entrepreneurs are working into their early 70s. I mean, you own a business, it's your baby. You may back off of how much you're doing, but this whole sort of arbitrary, you're done in your early 60s, I don't think that holds true whatsoever on Main Street anyway.
I totally agree with you. All right, so we've talked about some of the some of the myths and bureaucracy and things that can be impediments to entrepreneurship, I think we should pivot here because there was another article that we highlighted this week in Inc., and it was all about the pitfalls to avoid as a new entrepreneur. So there were 7 key things. I'm gonna touch on each of the 7 just so everybody knows what those pitfalls are, and then we're just going to discuss a couple of them. So. Pitfall number 1, adding new services. Pitfall number 2, getting too hung up on what we're going to name the company. Pitfall number 3, trying to be the cheapest product or service. 4, making everyone happy. 5, doing everything yourself. 6, following your business plan to the letter. 7, getting it perfect. So I don't know if all of these would ever apply to any person, but I certainly can identify a few of these that would have applied to me when I was working in my business and getting it up and running. So a couple of those are a little bit more interesting than others, and some we can do a whole podcast on. And we may do that, but I think we'll start out here with this adding new services. Patrick, you want to speak to that a little bit about how it can be a pitfall to get hung up on that?
Yeah, this is that deceptive thing where an entrepreneur, a new business owner is looking out there and they see all these revenue streams and they can't help but want to capture them all, right? So they start out with the one that got their business going that they're familiar with, but then pretty soon they're like, well, why don't we sell this? And why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? And all these other companies have all these different offerings on their menu and we only have 2. We've got to add more stuff. I think there is a time and a place to add services and products without question, but it's probably down the road a little bit. I think you want to be really, really good at what your core competency, your core service, your core product is. You want to be able to handle your clients so well that they're begging you for additional services, not what other piece of revenue can I just sort of throw a hook out there and hope that I catch. This one is pretty common. We don't have enough sales. Let's add a service. Well, imagine what it's like to try to market to your sales staff, have to handle knowledge and the ability to sell multiple different things. You're probably better off going and taking your core piece and perfecting the sale and marketing of that and perfecting how you deliver it to your clients.
I absolutely think that plays into pitfall 4, which is making everyone happy. Because what I'm hearing you talk about is focusing. And, you like to talk about it with our clients as threading the needle.
Yeah. And what I always just say is folks come to me and they're trying to cast the biggest net they can cast. And so anything they catch in the net is in their minds positive, but it's inefficient. And there's a lot of waste and you're not focused in a way that you can optimize anything. And so I always say, here's the deal. You don't want to fray the thread to be able to get it through the eye of the needle. It has to be just exactly right. Once it gets through the eye, it can fray or expand, right? So once you actually are there and you're successful and you've got it, adding stuff then makes sense, but not before. That focus is essential in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that goes a lot to, like I said, to making everyone happy. If you're focusing on your target customer and your target customers are happy, your business is going to expand. If you start looking at the outliers and thinking, oh, I'm going to go for this and I'm going to go for this and I'm going to go for this, then logically you're not threading the needle and you're not likely to satisfy everyone.
And I also think that's also what drops in your lap. I mean, I see this all the time, and I've done this to myself. I have clients who come and they present with clients and revenue, and they'll say things like, I don't want to do this type of work. I came into this because I want to do this type of work, but all my business is this type of work. So we'll say, okay, well, let's come up with a plan to get you the clients you want. But then once we get close to flipping to that plan, they get very protective of all this stuff dropping in their lap that they previously said they didn't want to do. And you say, well, why are you doing that? Well, we don't want to turn away any business. Well, you can't make the space for the business you want if you don't turn away business you don't want. And if you're not driving the business, you're not attracting and driving the business to you that is what you want to be doing, then whatever shows up is acceptable. And that becomes, once again, inefficient, making everybody happy, not being true to what you want and who you are. And it's usually a recipe for mediocrity.
Yes. I think knowing who you are and having that focus is definitely essential to not get going off in divergent directions and paths that you may regret going down. So let's talk about perfectionism. I think a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs can identify with this idea that it has to be perfect before I send it out into the world. You know, it needs to be 100% fully formed. What do you say about that?
I take a deep breath and sigh. Here's the thing, and this is especially true for startups. Okay, I think that a going concern, a business that's in existence, can tolerate a little bit of that perfectionist tendency, not too much though, but a little bit. But a startup, you have no business trying to be perfect. It is completely going to bankrupt you. You need sales. You need to go out there. You need to find out how the market reacts to you. You need to do it, not perfect it, because you don't know what your clients really want. You have a suspicion, but until you're selling it to them, till you're delivering it to them, till they give you feedback, till you're in feedback loops, you're not going to be able to perfect it anyway. So sitting in the back room, designing and perfecting and improving something that you're not even actually selling at any real level is a complete and utter waste of resources and time. In addition to that, I think you have to be really careful that even in a going concern, that you don't spend so much time perfecting everything in the back that the front never sees it. You know, you never open the doors to your business because you're perfecting how your display looks inside. You know, how your sales floor is laid out. You know, you got to get it exactly right. Let some people in the door, sell a few things. You can always adjust that stuff as you go.
And almost always you will anyway. Even if you've delayed, you open your doors, you still realize you've got to move things around.
Absolutely. And I'll tell one funny story because it was me doing it. I had a chance to make an impact in a particular industry. And we were a startup. And I sunk all the money we had into this coming out party that went fabulous. We were at a conference. We designed a booth that was just spectacular. We got everybody's notice. We had the press noticed us for that industry. People were coming up and talking to us. I mean, it was a coming out party unlike any other. Huge success. Then we went home. Now we're out of money. We've done this thing, but how to capitalize on it and with what resources? And you know, wow, that was fun, but so what? So you have to be really careful of that beautiful, perfect thing that you build. That it isn't in it for itself. It needs to lead to other things, right? You're going to be in business beyond that moment of perfection.
Wow, that was a really relevant and personal pitfall story, Patrick. Thank you for sharing that.
It was a painful lesson.
Yeah, we need to learn from each other's pain. I think that's super important. So, thanks for being willing to open up and share about that. Well, I hope this was helpful for all of our listeners out there to hear about some of the obstacles and pitfalls to avoid for entrepreneurs. we know that post-pandemic, there are going to be tremendous opportunities out there. There are going to be a lot of new businesses getting started. And I think this information is really important to help those folks out.
Agreed.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next time on SBI's Reigniting Small Business podcast.
Bye, everybody.